Greetings, everyone. I'm Laurie, Lane-Zucker, founder and CEO of Impact Entrepreneur, and welcome to our webinar, Incubating Impact Companies, Stories from the Field. And a special welcome to all those members of the Impact Entrepreneur Network attending this webinar today. Impact Entrepreneur is a global network of systems-minded changemakers, 23,000 entrepreneurs, investors, scholars, and students of social and environmental innovation who believe that this work needs to be done within a transformational framework. We build companies, we invest in them, we study and teach about them, but we also understand that we have to collaborate to build a new business paradigm and ecosystem around them in order to find an authentically sustainable way forward. So if you agree with this last statement and are not yet a member, please join the network. It is free. The only entry fee is your commitment to the business of change. Impact Entrepreneur has two series of webinars. The first series, of which this particular webinar is a part, is called Building an Impact Economy. This series offers content that is practical, hands-on, and instructive, usually in the form of slide presentations and topical panel discussions like this one. The second series is called Luminarious, and it offers content that is more reflective, contextual, and inspirational, and usually takes the form of virtual fireside chats. This is our third calendar year of webinars, having started them in 2018. Select programs from our past years can be found on our YouTube channel, Impact Entrepreneur TV. Note also that at the moment, you can become a premium member of Impact Entrepreneur for only $50 and get complimentary admission to all of our upcoming live webinars through July, as well as access to our entire archive of past webinars, which now number over 50. Now, this is a January special, so it ends tomorrow. You can find information on premium membership, subscribing to Impact Entrepreneur TV, and our upcoming webinars on our website at www.impactalchemist.com. Now, I'm extremely pleased to introduce our program to you. As I mentioned, this webinar is part of the Building an Impact Economy series. We've spent many a past webinar on impact investing themes, but I also like our webinar series to address the so-called demand side of the impact investing universe, which means the entrepreneurs and their growing companies that are populating the emerging impact economy. An example of a past webinar on this theme would be last year's amazing fireside chat with Kathy Clark from Duke University's Case Center, which you can find in our webinar archive. As someone who has built Impact Entrepreneur in a rural area of the United States called the Berkshires, where there is little to no infrastructure and funding to support impact entrepreneurs and little institutional understanding of such things as impact investing, I've often looked a little, I must admit, jealously at the vibrant urban entrepreneurial ecosystems, both here and in the United States and abroad, and have marveled at the growth of impact hubs and social innovation centers that provide community and resources to entrepreneurs on a mission, as well as sometimes exposure to funders. Impact incubators and accelerators, which have been emerging at a relatively rapid clip over the past decade plus, are a vibrant part of this movement. And in certain cases, I find them authentically pioneering and quite visionary. This webinar brings together representatives of 4 of these impact business greenhouses with the goal of sharing information about their distinctive approaches and to offer valuable kernels of wisdom gleaned from their years of working with entrepreneurs. Let me introduce our panelists. Allie Burns brings nearly 2 decades of experience working with entrepreneurs and innovators at the intersection of tech and social change to her role as CEO of Village Capital. Prior to joining the organization in 2016, she served as a senior executive at Revolution and the Case Foundation, the venture capital firm and private family foundation created by former AOL executives Gene and Steve Case. In that role, she led the organization's communications and marketing teams and was instrumental in the development of major initiatives, including the Rise of the Rest, the Startup America Partnership, and the Be Fearless campaign. Welcome, Allie.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Luni Libes is a 25-year serial entrepreneur and co-founder of 6 companies. His latest startups are Fledge, the Conscious Company Accelerator, where he helps new mission-driven for-profit entrepreneurs from around the world navigate the complexities between idea and customer revenues, and investorflow.org, an online service connecting impact investors. In addition, Luni is an entrepreneur in residence emeritus at the University of Washington's CoMotion, the Center for Innovation and Impact, and has taught entrepreneurship at both UW and at the Bainbridge Graduate Institute. Luni is author of the Next Step series of books and podcasts guiding entrepreneurs from idea to startup, and the Pinchot Impact Index, a way to measure, compare, and aggregate impact. Welcome, Luni.
All right, thanks for having me, Laurie.
Alexandra Martin's daily job is to speak with entrepreneurs from all over the world and guide them on how to obtain the support they need. From a family of entrepreneurs herself, she started her career working in banking and corporate finance, and 5 years ago shifted paths to specialize in social innovation. Since then, she has worked with NGOs, social ventures, and other impact-driven initiatives, with a special focus on promoting social inclusion and change through entrepreneurship. With experience across different sectors, organizational cultures, and countries, 1 year ago, she joined Bridge for Billions, the online incubator for early-stage startups, building a digital ecosystem that supports everyone, everywhere, to impulse their ventures. Welcome, Alex.
Thank you. Hi, thank you for the invite.
Pooja Wagh is the lead of Solve's health pillar and director of results measurements for Solve, which is based at MIT. She develops and nurtures relationships with Solve's health-focused members, partners, and solver teams, and works with them to drive forward promising, innovative solutions to intractable challenges in the health and wellness space. She also oversees monitoring and evaluation of Solve's portfolio of solver teams and measures the impact of Solve's partnerships on the ability of solver teams to affect change. Prior to joining Solve, Pooja worked at Innovations for Poverty Action, where she managed a portfolio of rigorous research projects aiming to improve the access and quality of financial services in underserved areas around the world, and at IBM Global Business Services as a consultant. Pooja holds a master's in public policy from the Harvard Kennedy School and a bachelor's in electrical engineering from MIT. Welcome, Pooja.
Thanks so much for having me, Laurie.
Okay, let's get to the panel discussion. You know, as is mentioned on the Eventbrite page, we're going to be covering several general subject areas, such as the panelists' unique approaches to incubation and or acceleration, the relationship to funders, the emerging funding models for impact companies, general advice they have for entrepreneurs as well as investors, and also to discuss their relationship with higher education. Now, I'd like to start by asking each of the four panelists to tell us briefly about your organization and then answer these two questions. What is an incubator and what is an accelerator? And are these terms ever confused? I often find there is confusion, or at least differing perspectives, even among people active in incubators and accelerators. So it'd be good to have each of your perspectives. And Allie, would you like to start off?
Sure thing. So Village Capital, we are one of the largest organizations supporting and investing in seed stage impact-driven companies around the world. Over the last decade, we've supported more than 1,000 entrepreneurs in more than 24 countries who are creating solutions that expand access to economic opportunity and improve the sustainability of our planet and its people. We've run more than 100 accelerator programs that have resulted in 110 investments from our affiliated venture fund through a very unique peer review-based investment process. And we're proud of the financial results and the impact we're seeing from our portfolio. We're also equally as excited about the diversity of founders we've backed. 46% of the companies in our portfolio are female-led. 30% of the companies in our US portfolio are founded by people of color, and 80% are based outside of the 3 states that get a majority of venture capital: New York, California, and Massachusetts. On the accelerator versus incubator question. Maybe I'll start, Laurie, with the question of, are these terms confused? And I'd say yes, typically they can be confused. I think in terms of definition, it's important to look at the literal definition of each word. An incubator is really just that. It's incubating potentially disruptive ideas at the very early stage, and generally helping to hatch new companies by building on these disruptive ideas and developing business models to help these companies become investable. But typically, as companies come into an incubator, they're not ready to take on traditional investment capital, although there's probably a separate, longer conversation about lowering barriers to access for incubators for people who don't necessarily have the resource to even get to the stage where they can focus on their idea on a more concentrated basis. On the accelerator definition, it's literally about accelerating the trajectory of a business. So if you think of it as a continuum, once a business model exists, the question for an accelerator is, how do you supercharge that company so that it is well positioned to grow, to generate revenue, to take on investment capital? And so those programs look typically look different. I will say that there are many organizations that do both. At Village Capital, we focus on the acceleration side, but there are a number of organizations, particularly those with physical spaces, who have incubation and acceleration capabilities.
Thanks. Luni, can you tell us about your work at Fledge and also answer those questions?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. So Fledge is the Conscious Company Accelerator. We work with mission-driven companies as well. One of the big differences between us and the rest of the panelists and most of the rest of the organizations out there is that we're impact first, and we don't really care about tech. If the company has technology, that's great. If they don't, that's fine too. We'll invest in chicken companies and companies that are making cooking oil, as well as companies that have apps and websites and web services. We've been up and running since 2012, so that's 7.5 years. We've run programs in eight cities around the world. We invest in every company that comes through the program. So that's 15 sessions so far, 95 companies based in 27 countries. And we'll talk about novel models of investing in a bit, but we use a revenue-based model for all our investing. In terms of the definitions, I agree a lot with Allie on those definitions. One thing I'll add in there on the accelerator side is, to be a current modern accelerator, it has to be cohort-based and a rather short amount of time, 2, 3, 4 months at most. If it starts to get to be 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, that's not really an accelerator more. That's something of an incubator or something else.
Thank you. Pooja.
Yes, so MIT Solve is an initiative of the Office of the President of MIT. We were started a few years ago with the explicit mission of democratizing access to the kinds of resources we have here at MIT and in our network to innovators around the world who have great ideas and could really make a dent in some of the world's biggest challenges, but who simply don't have that same access. So what we do is we go out and find those innovators through a yearly open innovation competition that we run. We have a wide variety of topics that we run these competitions on. And once we identify those innovators, we bring in about 30 to 35 each cycle. Once we identify them, we support them for 12 months. And what makes us really unique, I think, is a couple of things. One, we crowdsource ideas for our competition. So we're not running topical challenges that are sponsored by a particular corporation or partner. What we're doing is we're going out to communities to understand what problems they face and shaping those ideas that we crowdsource into challenges that we launch each spring. We also crowdsource solutions. So we have an open innovation platform that was actually developed through 10 years of research at MIT. And we use that to solicit applications, to build teams and build those solutions, and eventually judge and select and support the solutions that we choose. So I think the definitions that were given already of what an incubator is and what an accelerator is, I think are great, and I don't have a lot to add. I will say that MIT Solve doesn't fit into either of those traditional definitions. We're somewhere in between because we are a non-residential program. We're also 12 months long, so we're not quite an accelerator. We work both with early stage companies and later stage, and we're providing entirely customized support because we're doing all of it through our partner network. So whether a company is coming in with an early stage prototype and they have no idea what to do with it, even if they want to go the for-profit or nonprofit route, or if they're much later stage, they're already raising their Series B funding, we can serve all of them through the member network that works with us to provide support, and the MIT faculty and staff and centers that support them as well.
Thank you. Alex, tell us about Bridge for Billions and your thoughts on incubators and accelerators.
Yes, sure. So I think we're more aligned with what Pooja just mentioned. Our missions are very, very aligned. Bridge for Billions, I don't know if you've heard of Bridge for Billions or how much you know about it, but our main mission is also to democratize or to increase access to quality entrepreneurship support, and globally as well. We also have an online platform, an open innovation platform, and for startups or entrepreneurs, and whether it's a team or a solo founder, to be able to develop their business plan from value proposition to implementation and growth plan. It's a 3-month program with the help of a mentor. And the main advantage is also that the startup has ownership of adapting the program to their needs and to be able to develop their own scenarios as the program evolves. We also work on a global level. We will work with entrepreneurs and with organizations. We've been around for almost 5 years now, and we are very happy of being able to have supported 1,000 entrepreneurs from different areas of innovation, whether it's a small family business or a scalable business, and from 63 countries. And about the incubator versus accelerator, I think everything has almost been said. But I think what we should look at is that they're not supposed to be, there's not a main benefit from one or the other. It all has to do with what stage are you in, what kind of support are you looking for your startup. This is the questions you have to ask yourself to understand what kind of support do you need. Then you may be also understanding if you have to go for a more mission alignment with this program, what are the kind of resources that you need.
Thank you. So moving on to my next question is, do incubators increase this chances of success? And how do you measure success? And do you keep statistics of your impact? Pooja, would you like to tackle this one first, and then we can open the floor to the other panelists who'd like to answer too?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think Alex hit the nail on the head. It really depends on what an innovator needs. From our experience, yes, programs like ours, and I think the programs that everyone on this panel is running are absolutely incredible for a lot of the entrepreneurs that are coming in. As I mentioned before, we're not a traditional incubator, but we're providing some similar services, and we're doing that through our partners. So Solve provides to the entrepreneurs that we're bringing in, depending on their needs, we're able to provide mentors, coaches, grant funding. So for example, last year we gave out $1.5 million to the 32 innovators that were selected as part of the 2019 cohort. And then we also connect our innovators to other funding opportunities, some of which comes from Solve's investment fund itself. But the big thing that we believe is truly catalytic for a lot of these entrepreneurs, of course, all of that is really valuable, but it's really these partnerships that we're building. So whenever we bring in a new innovator, we do a needs assessment with them to understand what's really standing in the way of their success. And based on their answers to that, we connect them with the appropriate partners who can help them. For earlier stage organizations, often that really is a mentor and an advisor who can help them take their business plan to the next level. Or maybe it's a workspace where they can sit with other innovators, in which case we might connect them to a more traditional incubator that has a physical space. For later stage, maybe it's completely focused on investment, but there are so many things in between, including an innovator might be looking for a partner to work with to distribute their product, or places where they can pilot their tech prototype. I do think that our model works. I'm very committed to what we're doing here, and it's been amazing to see it grow. So I think others also think that it works. So in the last 3 years, we've grown our portfolio to 130 innovators, which we call solver teams. And then also we work now across MIT's campus with countless faculty and staff, and we have over 120 companies outside of MIT that we're working with to support these innovators. You asked how we measure our success. This is tricky to do, and coming from the world of randomized evaluation, I wish I could just run an RCT to understand whether we're having an impact, but we cannot. And so right now we're measuring success in a couple of ways. One is by counting the number of partnerships that we are building between our innovators, our solver teams, and the partners. So as of right now, over the last 3 years, we've built 175 partnerships that are valued at $10,000 or more, and that's either a monetary exchange or resource exchange or a bigger collaborative project that they're working on together. And we've moved over $12 million to tech entrepreneurs over that time period. The other thing we ask all of our teams, which I think is really important, is whether the partnerships that we've built for them have been transformational for their businesses or for their organizations. And that's been really incredible to hear, because a lot of innovators have told us that they started with a prototype without us. They never could have taken it to market, and we've really been the reason that they've been able to grow.
Thank you. I'd love one or two of the other panelists to talk about this question. Allie?
Yeah, I'd be happy to jump in here. First, I'd love to give a plug for the Global Accelerator Learning Initiative, which is focused on measuring the effectiveness of accelerators writ large. For all of you who are participating on the panel who are running accelerators or incubators, I would encourage you to share your data with the Global Accelerator Learning Initiative, because the information is only as good as the amount of data that they have. But what they are looking at is the question of, are entrepreneurs better off after they participate in accelerator programs? And so to answer the broader question, the answer is yes. Entrepreneurs that participate in programs measured by GALI for short do raise more capital, generate more revenue, and create more jobs than entrepreneurs who do not participate in those programs. So that's sort of a bigger picture. Those are measures by which we look at as well to measure our success, but we certainly look at the sort of basic measure of success for us is the success of our portfolio. Are these companies able to succeed in terms of their business growth? It doesn't always mean raising capital. For us as investors, of course, raising capital does help with the performance. But if the companies are building businesses that have impact baked in, we know that by growing those businesses and helping them grow those businesses, we've been successful in helping them expand their impact as well.
Luni, you look like you might have had some things you wanted to say.
Yeah, our measure of success is pretty simple. How many graduates are still running? So again, it kind of goes back to the difference between incubators and accelerators. We're bringing in companies that are already up and running. We expect them to finish the program running. We expect them a year later to still be running, and 5 years and 10 years and 20. So if they're still running, then that's great. And if they're still running 5 years later, then they must have done something right. They must have either raised capital and grown or found a path to profitability. So we don't need to measure those other intermediaries. We just keep track of how many are still running.
Mm-hmm. Great. Alex, do you want to chime in, or should we move on to the next question?
We can move. The only thing I would add, because Luni just said what I was going to say, is that our impact is really our entrepreneurs' impact. So of course, an entrepreneur that did a program has more accountability, legitimate. I mean, it's for in terms of the sector and for who looks for this company, it's different. But it's just for if you run an incubator, if you run an accelerator, please make sure that impact has to be measuring impact has to be one of your priorities, since this is your impact, is their impact.
Great, thanks. So my next question is, and Alex, I'll just keep the focus on you, at least initially. How do you find the entrepreneurs you work with?
I'll try to be brief to compensate the last one. So in our case, we work in two approaches. As I said before, our main objective is to increase the access to this kind of support and to high quality support that usually is not very easy to access to people that are not in these major entrepreneurship and thriving ecosystems like the ones that maybe we represent here in this panel today. So we offer open cohorts, global cohorts for entrepreneurs from all over the world in different sectors to apply. Usually we have one of these every month. But then we also partner with other organizations, just as other programs here too, where we co-create programs according to either their open innovation needs or their impact needs or their objectives. For example, we can work with Coca-Cola because they want to do a program for female entrepreneurs in rural Spain, or with Heineken for open innovation. Well, many, many examples. And then when we select them, our main objective, if this is our program, is to understand if the program can actually benefit them. So are they in the right stage? Is this really a solution for a meaningful problem? But this is the solution because our platform is online and our program is online, it allows us to reach a lot of people and in different geographies, in different sectors, etc. And this is how we do it, either partnering with the organization, either opening it to the public, or really seeking partnerships with other incubators, with other accelerators, with other multipliers from the ecosystem to be able to reach more entrepreneurs and maybe in a more consolidated way.
Mm-hmm. Pooja, how do you find your entrepreneurs, or how do they find you?
So through a lot of legwork, but we're very dependent on the amazing network that we've built over the course of the last few years. So we send out a lot of communications to that network, and people help us by forwarding information along. One thing that we do have a focus on is finding entrepreneurs who are underserved, because that's a big part of democratizing access. So we are also doing a lot to build out our pipeline of innovators who do have these really amazing ideas, maybe are less equipped to fill out an application that would allow them to get into an incubator or accelerator program. So one new thing that we're doing this year is we are actually running a MOOC, a massive open online course through MIT-X, that gives applicants the basics for how they can build a business plan and how they can make an impact plan. And that will really help them, hopefully not only with our application, but with any other applications that they might be filling out. So we're doing a lot of work to get the word out about that course, which will hopefully build out our applicant set as well. And then finally, we do what we call solve-a-thon workshops, which are essentially hackathons, but we use our own kind of methodology for those. And we always have staff traveling all over the world to run these hackathons to generate solutions as well. So last year we received almost 1,400 applications from over 100 countries, and we hope to broaden our reach even further.
Great, thanks. Luni or Allie, do you want to chime in on this one, or we can move on to the next question? Up to you.
I'm good. We can keep going.
Okay, let's talk about in your view, the differentiation between conventional companies and impact companies. Is it harder for a double or triple bottom line company to succeed? Are the timelines different from conventional non-impact companies? And is it even harder to raise monies as, say, a B Corp? Luni, do you want to tackle this one?
Yeah, sure. So we didn't put it in the bio, but I started as a techie. I did the first 20 years of my career as a software entrepreneur, and all in Seattle, which means always getting on an airplane going to California to get money. You can't do that in impact. There isn't any concentration of venture capital funds. There's about a 200th or a 500th the amount of capital in impact as in tech, which is, I think, why one reason why almost everyone in the space is looking for digital solutions that do good in the world and looking for tech solutions that do good in the world, because there's more money there. And so that's the biggest challenge. When I'm working with these entrepreneurs that we're working with in let's just say, you think the Berkshires is rural eastern Uganda. We're the largest investor in Tororo, Uganda. We've invested in 3 companies. I don't know of a single other investor that's ever invested in that county in Uganda. And then we're trying to find follow-on investors to follow on our first money. And we are slowly succeeding at that. So that's basically the hardest part is just the fact that there just won't be that growth capital. And capital is really useful in startups for just plowing through issues. Money can solve a lot of problems. When you don't have it, you just have to solve it in other ways, and the other ways usually just take longer. In terms of success rate, no, it's about the same. In terms of growth rate, it can be the same. It's just constrained on capital.
Allie, can you chime in on this one?
Yeah, I think Luni is hitting on a very important point, which is that the default in impact at the early stage has often been to try to copy and paste the tech or Silicon Valley model. And the reality is that may be applicable in some sectors. If you look at sort of fintech and financial health, there are a lot of sort of more traditional sort of venture-like return opportunities. If you think about the timeline for fast growth, grow gangbusters or bust. But I think what's important to recognize is that not only in impact, but in different geographies, the capital stack looks very different. The culture looks very different in terms of what investors are looking for, how to get people excited. And there isn't sort of this one size fits all model to try to support companies. I'd say that's true outside of impact as well. But since the topic of this conversation is really about impact, I think that there needs to be the growth of a movement to really focus on building on things, innovative things that people have done, like Luni thinking about revenue share as an approach, because there are different challenges and different opportunities in the impact space.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. I can just speak from some interesting personal professional experience that I started in 2006, 2007, a precursor to Impact Entrepreneur called Hot Frog, which became one of the first certified B corporations, one of the first 20 or so, and had some of the earlier private equity impact investments in there. In fact, we have one of the people attending the webinar today, Liz Wald, was one of my key colleagues in developing that early entrance into the space. I have to say that the universe of impact has evolved immensely since then. It was really kind of lonely 10, 12 years ago with hardly any impact incubators and accelerators and hardly any impact investors out there. So it's been really wonderful to see just how it's matured and scaled over the last 10, 12, 15 years. Let's move on to a really key question, which is, are you seeing more women entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs of color in this impact incubator accelerator space? Do you have a specific focus on entrepreneurs and communities of color? Allie, do you want to do this one first?
Sure. So I mentioned at the beginning of the conversation that we have seen very different results when it comes to who is actually making it into our portfolio. That is also representative, of course, of the cohorts that we're seeing. We don't actually make the investment decisions. We do that through peer review. So we're excited about the fact that we're seeing sort of a representative number of entrepreneurs from backgrounds that have typically been untapped and overlooked ending up in our portfolio. We are very intentional about sourcing entrepreneurs from a variety of geographies, backgrounds, experiences, gender, racial background, because we believe that A, it's a huge untapped opportunity, and B, because we rely on this peer review-based investment process, it's only going to be as good as the diversity of perspectives that are in the room when the peer selection happens. And all of the data shows that diversity equals better decision-making. And so that's really the ethos that we operate under. And so we're very excited about what we're seeing. I would say the question of, are there more, I'd actually be curious to see if there is data around representation of women and people of color in the impact space vis-a-vis sort of the more traditional startup space. I from a data perspective, in terms of what we have, I think most accelerators across the board, impact agnostic, have about 40% female participants. That's about the participation rate that we see in our own programs. So from that particular data point, we're not seeing necessarily increased diversity in our own accelerator programs. I think there are some indicators that there may be a higher representation of diversity in the impact space, but I'd be curious actually if others have data points that they've seen on that topic.
Great. Do we have another panelist who'd like to offer some words of wisdom here?
I mean, I can maybe say something. It is interesting that maybe we don't have general numbers because we keep comparing our numbers. We keep comparing. I can tell Bridge for Billions numbers, and we can compare it. But it was interesting to really understand how can we as an ecosystem understand, are there more female entrepreneurs than male entrepreneurs in general, or in impact ecosystem in general? How many are more likely to succeed or not? Do female entrepreneurs look for incubators and accelerators because they have no means of doing it by themselves? Are they finding the right support? It would be interesting to also understand these trends, to really understand, are we reaching more people, or is it in more a consolidated way? Are we lacking still partnerships to be able to reach these people in a more scalable way? Those are the numbers that I really wish we'd see. I mean, we all know the impact system is very dispersed. What are actually the gaps that we really need to fill in to understand and reason our own numbers? Are they a reflection of the ecosystem or not?
Mm-hmm. Pooja, does MIT have a concerted focus on kind of diversity, or does that happen kind of organically, given your unique situation at MIT and Solve?
We absolutely have a focus on diversity, and it goes back to our original mission of democratizing access. In our portfolio, we actually have of the 130 solutions that we currently support, 52% of them are women-led, but we could certainly do better there. Many of those are mixed teams, so there might be a woman who's part of the leadership, and then it's everybody else she's working with is male. We don't actually, we're excited that there's a woman as part of that team, but I think there's still more work to be done there. So a lot of our focus is on making sure that we're reaching those people who we know are underfunded and we know are maybe less equipped to, like I was saying before, who have great ideas or are just less equipped to get into the ecosystem that all of us are players in. So we do a lot, the outreach that we do, we really believe that it's about the outreach and it's about building that early part of the pipeline. And so a lot of the work that we do is very focused there.
Mm-hmm. Great. Luni, you do, you work both a lot in the United States and then internationally. And I'm wondering if you can give some insights into the percentage of female entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs of color in the United States, that percentage, and whether it's different in your programs abroad.
Yeah, so we don't put in our application what your skin color is or what pronouns you use. We don't care about that. We find that out when we get to the interview stage and we're staring like this over Zoom with the person, and then we go, oh, look, that name is female, or that name is male. And internationally, like, we can't tell until literally we get to that stage. There's plenty of female entrepreneurs, but it's definitely not, when we get to that stage, it's definitely not 50-50. There are definitely more men running companies than women. When it comes to white or people of color, most of our fledglings are not white because they're not American. Inside the U.S., we're getting some requests by our investors. We're all driven by investors to go and do more with disadvantaged Americans. I think that's how they would call it. And so we're looking to spin up some programs around the country to do that specifically. But so far, when we're bringing in the The American companies, I'd say they're running about 50-50 male and female. But that seems to be what everyone else is saying.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. We've got about 15 minutes before we get to the Q&A. We've got already got about a dozen or so questions on the queue. If you could all help me by upvoting questions on the queue that you really want to hear asked and addressed, that's really helpful, because it's unlikely that we'll be able to get to all the questions as hard as we try. So please help us out there by upvoting. I'm interested to kind of broaden the question to kind of other interesting trends that you're seeing emerging in this space. Luni, do you have anything more you want to add about? I mean, I want this to be broad, because I'm sure each of you have some interesting things that you're seeing.
Yeah, I'd say the most interesting of all, so again, I've been doing this for 7.5 years. I think there were 4,000 accelerators that I could find 7 years ago when I was doing the research. And in Impact, it was a few hundred. There's probably 1,000 now in Impact, and 20 or 30,000 accelerators around the world. It's just some incredibly large number. I would have told you, if you had asked me in 2012, what year would we hit peak application? What year would the numbers of applications start going down per program because we were saturating? I would have told you, I don't know, 17, 18, maybe 19. But it just keeps going up. Like ours almost keeps doubling year over year, which is just showing that either entrepreneurship is growing, or the people out there are believing that accelerators and incubators actually do something, which I think they do. And so more and more entrepreneurs are applying. The quality is better. The stage is further along as well. They're applying later in growth. And that's the big trend. So if anything, the next trend that I expect to see in the 2020s is twofold. I expect to see something emerge that is neither an incubator or an accelerator. It's something else that comes after the accelerator, and it helps the companies get from hundreds of thousands in revenue to millions. And then the other thing is more and more networks. MIT has a big enough brand; they can do what they want alone. But Village Capital is really a network of organizations, and Fledge is a network of organizations, and Uncharted is a network of organizations, and Techstars is even bigger. It's a network a huge network of organizations. And so I just think we'll see some consolidation around networks, and that'll drive even greater numbers of applications and greater growth.
Mm-hmm. I'd love for one or more of the other panelists to share some trends.
I'll just quickly say that even though we're MIT, we cannot do it alone. We absolutely need networks, and a lot of what MIT Solve is trying to do is create coalitions of other networks, because there are so many of us out there who are trying to accomplish the same thing. But I would echo a lot of what you said. I think the network piece, I'm seeing more and more. We're coming across many more organizations that are doing something similar to what we're doing, and it's been great to figure out ways to work together.
Great. Allie, it looks like you had something to say.
Yeah, I would just add one. I agree that trend of what happens after the acceleration process is one that is emerging. One trend I would hope to see on the flip side is at the earliest stages, how can we systematically reduce barriers for people to become entrepreneurs? Unfortunately, I don't think there's any global data on the new business starts, but the US data shows that that is continually actually reduced over time. And we know that it requires anyone to have access to either friends and family who have money, or money yourself to be able to take the risk and take the leap to start a company. And I'd love to see if there are ways we can systematically reduce those barriers and make that timeline from somebody who has an idea, the financing easier for them to get from idea to working on it full time, faster and more frequent.
Great. Let's move on to the next question. And we are getting really good questions in the queue. Please check out some of the new ones on there and upvote those. We have some new questions that have just been put on that are, some of which are really, really interesting. So the impact investing space has not only been growing quickly these last few years, doubling according to the GIN each of the last few years, but there are sub-movements within impact investing that have been emerging too. So for example, there's a growing interest in so-called place-based or community-centric investing. And to the extent you haven't already touched on this, I'd love for some of you to talk about where your organization sits on the globally scalable to place-based community-centric spectrum. Allie, can you tackle this one first?
Sure. I think one thing I'd comment on more broadly is there is a significant amount of interest that has emerged in place-based investing, in part generated by the Opportunity Zone tax carve out in the most recent US tax bill, which incentivizes investors to essentially put capital into companies and other investment opportunities in distressed communities. And so there is an emerging class of investors and supporters who are trying to figure out how to really build out this place-based investment in a way that supports entrepreneurship and impact-driven entrepreneurs specifically. All that said, Village Capital's focus is on the subset of those entrepreneurs who are building businesses that are sort of nationally or globally scalable, whether it's in the US or in some of the emerging markets that we work on. We have looked at opportunities to partner with a lot of the place-based investors to identify who those companies are and how we build a pipeline for those of us who are focused on sort of the more scalable companies. So we definitely sit on the more globally scalable side, but we see a critical role for place-based investors to play in sort of incubating and accelerating a variety of types of businesses, which include those sort of high growth businesses.
Great. Someone else want to chime in? Alex?
Hang on. Yeah, so global through local. I think they have to complement each other. I don't think it's possible to reach systemic and consolidated changes, as we have talked before, without, and fill all these gaps without really have an approach that complements both. There are two levels. We do have, the ecosystem is very, very dispersed, it's true. There are ecosystems that are more agile, more mature, more sophisticated, maybe like in the US. There are others that still are trying to understand what it is how to do programs that are consolidated, that are solid, that can do support with all the resources that entrepreneurs need. And then there's a huge accessibility constraint that blocks the ecosystem and impact investment really evolving and to become systematic. This ecosystem is not inclusive, and I think we have to be aware of this and to be aware of this limitation to really understand how we can impact more people, or how entrepreneurs and their solutions can impact more people in a more consolidated way. We have talked about this here. Of course, there are always looking at investment and trends. There are always areas of innovation that may be more appealing than others. But how can we really how can we overcome these challenges and tackle these challenges, stepping a little bit away of our inner circles, of our ecosystems, of our closed ecosystems within this great ecosystem, and have a mass impact? Is this the strategy of having broader networks? We all have unique value propositions. Can we work together and do programs that achieve more people in a more transversal way? I mean, as we were just saying, impact is trending, right? If we're a startup, momentum is everything, and capitalizing momentum is everything for impact and for the moment that we are living now in this ecosystem too. So I really think that if we want to reach entrepreneurs out of big urban cities, out of people that already are within the network, that have accessibility to pay, to look for opportunities, to know what it's out there, to reach rural communities, etc., be out of reach, we really have to work together and looking at both, looking at how do we reach community-based, is it through the network, and how to reach scalable solutions with the same quality.
Great, thanks. Let's move on to the next question. We've only got about a few more minutes before we get to the Q&A, and there's some things that I want to be sure we're touching on. Who funds the companies you work with? Do you have a special network of funders and investors that are focused on your companies? Luni and then Allie, I'd love you to both tackle these, and then the other two if you are interested.
Yeah, so as I said in the intro, Fledge invests in every company that we bring into the program. So we have our own venture capital fund. It's funded by Impact Angels, one foundation and a lot of Impact Angels. So they're providing the capital to do that. That's a very small check. It's $20,000 in the US, 15,000 euros in Europe. And then for follow-on money, we do have some capital that we raise to do that, but mostly we're finding impact investors around the world, generally institutions, and we're sharing our deals with them. And we're collecting lists of hundreds of these, figuring out exactly what they like and sending them fledglings that match.
Yeah, great. Allie?
Yeah, so in addition to very similar parallels to Luni, one of the things that we do, so all of our programs are sector and geography specific. So we'll run a program that is focused on supporting companies who are building solutions for financial health in Latin America, for example. We build a network of investors and other stakeholders around them to be able to generate interest in the investment opportunity, either during the program, the accelerator program, or to start building relationships that they can leverage later on. So some of the mentors will come in with no expectation of investment, but will keep in touch with the companies and be able to put capital into those companies further along the way. We don't invest in every company that we accelerate. We only invest in sort of 2 out of every 10 companies through the peer selected investment process. But one of the really important parts of what we do is to connect all of the entrepreneurs with investors, either for sort of more near-term needs, but also to help build those relationships for the long term.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. Allie, staying with you, do you have a set of best practices that you share with your entrepreneurs as they prepare to seek funding? Do you point them to particular types of instruments like program-related investments or other kinds of concessionary or market rate debt, or revenue-based returns? Luni says that that's what they always do, it sounds like. So revenue-based returns over expectations of exits when they seek equity. So are there best practices that you've developed there?
Yes, so the entire curriculum that an entrepreneur goes through with Village Capital is really focused on how to communicate with an investor. And part of that is because the ultimate outcome of the program is that every entrepreneur is going to make a decision like they are an investor. And it allows us to go through a framework that we call venture investment readiness and awareness levels. That viral for short. It's not the best acronym, but it's memorable. The entrepreneurs actually help view their business through the lens of an investor, through this milestone-based framework that sort of categorizes specific attributes of a business that investors typically look at various stages. And they really benchmark their businesses along that spectrum. So that allows them to think more about how to build their business based on what an investor would typically be looking for. That said, we do also encourage the entrepreneurs not just to look for sort of traditional equity capital, but to better understand how they want to grow their business so that they can determine whether they would be a good fit for revenue-based investment. Think about how they might want to leverage debt capital, which is not appropriate in every case, but in many cases for the types of companies we're supporting, and think about the sort of long-term relationship that they want to have and ownership that they want to have with their company. So we certainly try to expose them to an increasing array of opportunities to raise investment capital that go beyond sort of the traditional equity-based financing.
Mm-hmm. Luni, can you say a little bit more about revenue-based financing, why you've been such a strong advocate for that for quite a while now?
Yeah, because it's the right answer. The norm out there in startups is what other people have called California capitalism. I just love that term. In California capitalism, the investor puts money in a company. They get a percentage, 15, 20, 40% of the company. And the company promises them nothing. And then everybody hopes someday the company is acquired or goes IPO, which rarely happens, but is acquired for way more money than the investors put in, more than 10 times than the investors put in. And then everybody goes home happy. In the world of impact, A, that rarely happens. And so that's just a bad bet in terms of what to do with your money. But B, and more important, acquisitions in the world of impact are not usually celebratory events. That's usually the moment where we're worrying about whether the impact will continue on or not, whether the acquirer cares about the impact or just cares about the customers. And if you look at the history in the space at the organic food companies, which were the first impact companies to have big exits, they never got acquired. They all sold out, right? Just to be clear, that's the same, in fact, it's the same act. They got purchased by a bigger company, but everybody talks about Ben & Jerry's as selling out to Unilever, and Stonyfield sold out to Danone, and Honest Tea sold out to Coca-Cola. So they didn't celebrate those events, they mourned them. So instead of that, we do revenue-based investing, which is simply we as investors give money to a company, and they promise to share a small percentage of their future revenues, single-digit percentage of their future revenues, to give us back 1.5 to 2.5, 3 times our money back. The companies then can grow. We want them to grow. The investors can make a decent return, a market rate return. And the owners can then have their company back to do whatever they want, which is hopefully grow them and have more impact in the world.
Is it capped at 1.5 or 2%?
It's a revenue-based investing is a family of investments. Generally, we cap the return when we do the investment, and it's usually 2, with less if the company's further along, and it's a little higher if it's more risk or earlier.
Great. Let's get to some of the questions on the Q&A. Thank you, everyone. We've got a couple dozen terrific questions. I'm going to start right at the top. Now, before I get to this, actually, I am in the habit of sharing with you not only a link and password where you can restream this program later this afternoon, but I also will share the chat messages that have been shared with everyone. Now, there's a bunch of kind of introductory comments in the chats that have only been sent to the panelists. If you want your comments or your introduction or whatever you're sharing there to be shared with everybody, please copy and paste it back into the chat box and choose all panelists and attendees, and then I'll be able to share that later with the whole group. All right, so Kate is at the top of the queue. And she asks, Pooja and Allie have just touched on the M&E piece, success measurement of impact investment incubators. I'd love to learn more about this. Tracking the impact of incubators on the growth of impact-oriented companies. Also, what part of the company's success can be attributed to the incubator, and how do you know? Well, Pooja and Allie, you were mentioned in that. Do you want to, either one of you, want to try to tackle that first, Pooja?
Sure. That is a great question. And as a startup ourselves, we're still trying to figure out the best way to answer it. We are pretty conservative in the way that we measure our own impact on the innovators that we're supporting. So we absolutely collect data from the 130 solver teams in our portfolio to understand how they're growing, how they're advancing their solutions, who is still in existence, 3 years in. We'll collect data from them for 5 years. But when it comes to the support that we're providing, we think about the specific activities that we're doing and collect data on whether those activities are having an impact. So the main thing that we do to support these innovators is we create partnerships between the innovators and then those in our network. And those partnerships take the form of everything from grants to equity investments to mentorship to distribution agreements for products. And so those are the partnerships that we're measuring. If we have brokered a partnership, we're trying to understand the size of it and the value of it for the innovator, and also trying to understand whether it's been transformational for that innovator. Beyond that, and what I would really love to figure out, and if anyone has ideas, please email me, Solve is also trying to create a movement. So when we figure out a challenge that the world is interested in running, and we run that challenge and we generate a lot of interest for it, what we want is to be moving the needle on the conversation about that topic. So we're still working on exactly how we're measuring the growth of a movement, but that's the other way that we'll be thinking about how we're having an impact globally.
Terrific. Unless somebody else wants to chime in, we'll go to the next question. Tracy asks, how do the impact businesses in your programs typically find the early stage funding they need to meet your criteria, i.e. revenue, product, market fit, proof of concept?
I'll jump in and answer that one.
Hmm.
So we ask them that. That's part of our application. And the answer is friends and family. So their own savings, friends, family, a little bit of grants, which comes back to the social equity issue because not everybody has friends and family money. But, you know, unfortunately, that's just one of the realities at the moment is, again, I said there's more and more applicants every year, which means it's getting harder and harder to just put aside the fact that there's some company out there that had $50,000 of friends and family money and turned that into a $100,000 company. And we want to skip that because there's someone else who has no friends and family money and we can fill that gap for them. That becomes hard. But we do need to solve that problem.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Anybody else?
Maybe I can just add, I mean, exactly what Luni said, but also asking, an idea is not investment ready, right? So if you don't have friends, family, or fools to believe in it, and crowdfunding is not enough, or you cannot bootstrap enough, ask yourself, what would have clarity on what are you going to do with the money? Do you know exactly already what you need the money for? How would you invest in it? How would it make your business grow? So answer all these things that maybe are in an application level, but that you must know in order to really to show that that you know where you want the idea to grow, if it's just in a very early stage idea level, and be sure to know that it's needed, the market fit. So is this a real need from the market? Can you prove this? These are usually the suggestions a bit more detailed, but the conversations we have with entrepreneurs that are in a very, very early stage and like a lot of resources to even try to give the first steps and dedicate time to their ventures.
Thanks. So next question, my favorite former colleague Liz asks, what would love to hear about what sort of screening criteria are used to choose those who are accepted after the broad search has been narrowed down. Allie?
Happy to jump in on that and talk a little bit more about our process. So like the others here, we have an open call for applications. Anyone can apply, and there's a process by which we narrow down the companies, leveraging, and this is important for the final selection, leveraging a broader advisory board of entrepreneurs, investors, and other stakeholders that are in the sector and geography that we're running a specific program in. Those entrepreneurs, investors, and stakeholders score the companies based on a number of criteria, including alignment with the problem that they're trying to solve, potential for the company to grow, potential for the company to attract investment, because that is an important outcome, and then of course, potential to really drive significant impact. We have a selection process, a final selection process that involves a subset of those stakeholders so that we have, again, a diverse perspective of voices. The stakeholders include Victoria, our co-founder who runs our fund. It includes the Village Capital sourcing team. It includes a partner on the particular program and other investors and stakeholders as well, so that we have that diverse set of perspectives. And we look at a number of things when we put together a cohort, not just, is this a great company, but are we putting together a cohort of founders who are bringing a set of different perspectives to the table so that they can really be additive to each other. Because a huge benefit of the program, we believe, is not only the curriculum and expertise that we bring in from the outside, but the expertise that the founders themselves bring in and add to each other.
Great. I'd love to hear at least one other panelist.
I'll get to jump into this one.
Thank you.
We're investors too. So Ours boils down to 3 factors: team, impact, odds of success. So is it a great team? Can they do what they say they can do? Will they have a big impact? Not what the impact is. We're generalists. We don't care any specific sectors. We just want to see impact at least national scale, if not regional and global scale. And then do we think they can actually succeed? Like, what's going to get in the way? That'll get us down to, I think last year was 20, but we only bring in 7 at a time. And then it really just comes down to the tastes of our investors. We send out the short list to all our investors. They vote. We take the ones they like best. We do that. That sounds totally arbitrary and unfair, but we do that as a proxy to which ones we think will get funding, because they're all going to need some growth funding. So we use our investors as a proxy to all impact investors to try and gauge that. And then we feel terrible about turning away all the others.
Pooja, can you just speak briefly about your process?
Yeah, sure. So just as we crowdsource ideas for our challenges, and we're going out and soliciting applications from all over the world, we also engage a lot of different reviewers and judges as we're figuring out who to select. We receive quite a high volume of applications, so we typically end up engaging about 200 reviewers in an earlier round, and then another 100 in our final round as we're selecting. We're whittling down from, about 1,400 last year to 32. I think we have a rubric that we use as we're scoring in each of the rounds that we go through. I think some of the most important things that we're thinking about were already mentioned. So potential for impact, and like Luni, we're agnostic in terms of what type of impact that is. So we're excited about projects that are more place-based and can make a deeper impact, or that can make a broader global impact in the nearer term. We also think about whether they're feasible, whether they're scalable, and then also whether they take an innovative approach. And a part of that is the technology that they're using, since we're focused mostly on technology solutions.
Mm-hmm. So a couple of the people have asked questions asking whether the panelists can share contact information so they can follow up directly with you or the right person at your organization. Could each of the panelists, before we end next few minutes, put in either an email address or a website link into the chat box to all panelists and attendees so that the participants can kind of know where to follow up? That would be great. This next question from Camden is close to my heart. In fact, we did a webinar on DAFs just a couple webinars ago. That's in our archive. The question is there a role for DAF money, donor advised funds, to be the high risk capital to seed these impact startups? And if so, why haven't we seen a lot of it, or have you?
Sorry, I really got to jump into this one. This is one near and dear to my heart. I've been researching this most of last year. The DAFs out there don't know how to do investing. That's really what it comes down to. They just don't know how to make an investment and run an investment pool. And so we've been talking to some, and my nonprofit, which is where investorflow.org lives, in the next few weeks we'll be launching a system for making impact investments using philanthropy, using recoverable grants. So any DAF, any foundation, anybody who wants to do an impact investment using philanthropic dollars, we will have the low-cost solution. It's at realizeimpact.org. It's not on the website yet. That'll be up and running in about 2 weeks.
Great.
I
Allie?
just want to say that is awesome, first of all, very exciting. And I 100% agree. I think the other role that DAFs can play, in addition to being sort of risk capital for startups, is to be risk capital for funds that then invest in startups. The early pilots of the Village Capital model, which is sort of a radical idea, investors don't make decisions, entrepreneurs do, was funded by a DAF, and I'd love to see more of that happening. So very excited to hear what Luni is launching.
So as I mentioned, we did a webinar on DAFs just a couple months ago. with Impact Assets and RSF Finance, two of the kind of leading DAF holders in the impact space. So check that out. Also, that fireside chat I had with Kathy Clark, who created with her team at Case at Duke, the Smart Impact Capital platform, is definitely a fantastic resource for you, both the webinar and the platform. So check that out. One final question here from the queue is from Joy. Are there any best practices for finding a co-founder or a partner? I'm sure you all see this search a lot. Yeah, go ahead, Alex.
I'm sure everyone has a different tip that they can add. This is something that we are constantly being asked when they start the program, or even before, while trying to apply, is can I be a solo founder and still join the incubator? How to find a partner? Can I join the community just to find a partner or a co-founder? Also, be careful. This is someone you're going to work with. It's like finding almost a unicorn, right? If you don't have one at the beginning, but it's better. You have to find someone that you are mission aligned. You want to do the same thing, achieve the same thing, and in the same way, and who's willing to sacrifice and go on this cross the desert with you in the first years. Maybe someone that complements your experience in your areas of expertise. Maybe you're more specialized in this sector and the other person has a business approach or a more consolidated business model, or you complement each other for what you're trying to pursue. It's very important to be sure and to talk in the beginning about everything. So be very transparent and you're marrying this person business wise. So it's case to case, but really test everything that you need to test in the first weeks, in the first month, and be sure and protect yourself legally, protect your idea. Yes, just be very aware of what this commitment is.
Thank you. Well, we're at time, a little past time. For those of you who missed part of this webinar, and for all of you who'd like to watch this webinar again, I'll be sending you a link and password via Eventbrite, so make sure it doesn't get caught in your spam filter, in the next few hours. And that'll be good for a week, that link and password, so be on the lookout for that. After that, the program will exist in our webinar archive. Again, the website address is impactalchemist.com. Now, we have two exciting webinars coming up in February. The first, on February 12th, is called Measuring Impact in Opportunity Zones. And that will feature Fran Siegel from the U.S. Impact Investing Alliance, Jennifer Collins from Georgetown University's Beck Center. We also just have added somebody from the Federal Bank of New York, who works on opportunity zones. And we're also going to have a guest moderator of Jane Reisman. That's on February 12th. On February 20th, our Luminarius series of virtual fireside chat webinars will welcome the CEO of the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, Andrew Morley, and we're going to talk about his and their amazing work on circular economy, plastics, and related matters. So we have a number of other webinars in the works for you, as well as a very special new initiative that we're launching in early May. On May 4th, we'll be taking our Luminarius Fireside Chat series on the road for the first time for a very special in-person evening event called Luminarius by Candlelight, which will be held at the Penn Club in New York City, and will feature an intimate conversation on impact investing with two of the most important experts on impact investing in the world, Jed Emerson and Fran Siegel. And tickets for that will go on sale in a few weeks. So if you're in the New York City area, keep a lookout for that invitation and act quickly, because unlike our webinars, there will be limited space. Remember to consider our new premium membership, which gives you free admission to all our live webinars through July and complimentary access to the entire archive of past webinars, including some of the ones, or all of the ones I've mentioned, as well as advance notice about tickets for special programs like Luminarius by Candlelight. Again, the address is impactalchemist.com. Allie, Pooja, Alex, and Luni, thank you so much for sharing your deep knowledge and vast experience in growing impact business with us today.
All right, thanks for having me on.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. This was really fun.
And thank you everyone for joining us. Have a great day, and we'll see you at the next webinar. Take care now.